So number 17 for me, which is number 1 for you guys on your quiz, says which graph best represents the solution set of y is greater than 3x minus 4. I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes to do this problem, and then we will go over it. Alrighty, let's go over this one. So it says y is greater than 3x minus 4. And so let's talk about this being greater than. Okay, that means that it's going to be the values that are the biggest. And so if you look at all of these graphs, they're all graphed with the same line, just some are solid and some are dashed, and the shading is different. So that means we don't really have to worry about the actual line and graphing the y-intercept and the slope. We can just focus on what the line should look like and where it should be shaded. So this says greater than. That's the key word, okay? These are lower values. These are higher values. We want the higher values to be shaded. It should be shaded on top because y is greater than. So we can automatically cross out A and C. Okay. Now, we need to decide between solid and dashed. So if you guys remember, there's also inequalities that look like this, right? Do you guys think the one with a line underneath it would be a solid or dashed line is what you should ask yourself. And if you said solid, then you are correct. And the ones without the line underneath it are dashed because it can't be equal to what's on that line. This one is greater than or equal to, so it's a solid line, okay? Solid line, without the line underneath it, it's dashed. So the answer is D. Okay, let's move on to number 18. It says a bank account earning annual compound interest was opened, and no additional deposits or withdrawals were made after the initial deposit. The balance in the account after X years can be modeled by B of X equals 850 times 1.025 to the X power. Which statement is the best interpretation of one of the values in this function? So let's talk about this problem, okay? When we have compound interest, that is y equals A times B to the X, okay? A is the number outside of the parentheses, B is the number inside of the parentheses, and X is your exponent always, okay? So A, the number outside of the parentheses, is your initial amount, okay? B is 1 plus whatever your interest is. And it's a percentage, okay? So what I mean by percentage is if we have 25%, it's a percentage as a decimal. So if we have 25% as a decimal, that would be 0.25. So keep that in mind. So this one is 0.025, which means that it is 2.5%. Okay. So let's read through these answer choices. It says the initial balance of the account decreases at a rate of 97.5% each year. So if you plugged in some numbers, or if we went to y equals on our graph, so let's go to our graphing calculator. And I'm going to clear what's in there, and I'm going to go to y equals, remember y equals, and I'm going to plug in this equation. So it was 850 times 1.025, and then to make it to the X power, remember we use the caret button. The caret button is right under clear. So caret X, the X button is next to alpha. And then I'm going to look at the graph. Okay, I can't see anything, so I'm going to zoom out a bunch of times. And if you zoom out, zoom out, zoom out. Okay, it's not letting me. Zoom 3, zoom 3, zoom 3. I'm zooming out. There it is. So if you do it a bunch of times, eventually you will see your graph. Okay, so you're going to ask yourself, is it increasing or decreasing as it like goes from left to right? And the answer is it increases, and it increases a lot. Okay, and that's what an exponential function looks like. So we're going to go to and cross this off because it is not decreasing, it is increasing. Okay. The balance on the account increases at a rate of 2.5% each year. So that's where this number comes from. So that sounds like it's correct. Okay, so we've got an 0.025, which is 2.5%. So that could be correct. Let's read the next one. The initial balance of the account was $1,025. Now, the initial amount is the number in front, and you could also look at the graph to see what the initial amount is, and the initial amount would be at 0. So at 0, you would want to see what this point is. Whoa, don't know what just happened. And that point is actually at 850. So if you look at the table, you can see too, second graph at 0, it's 850. Okay. So we can, hold on. We can cross off that the initial account balance was $1,025. And then the balance on the account at the end of 1 year is $850. If you look at the graph, at 1 year, it is not 850. It's a lot bigger than that. So we would cross off this. So it's all about looking at the graph on these word problems. If they ever give you an equation, plug it into y equals and take a look at it and then make decisions. Okay. So number 19 says a company collected data for the number of text messages sent and received using a text message application since October 2011. The table shows the number of text messages sent and received in billions over time. The data can be modeled by a quadratic function. Which function best represents the data? So I want you guys to try to figure this out using your calculator app, and you've got 2 minutes starting now. All right, let's go over how to do this one in the calculator. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these equations and type them into y equals. So we've got, Ava, do you think that you can read me the equations? Oh, you can't look at your quiz too?
NT equals negative 0.002 t squared.
Okay.
Plus 0.55 t plus 5.02.
Okay. I'll just go back and forth. Okay. Sorry, guys. It's hard. 0.072. And we're changing the t's to x's, by the way. Hopefully you guys noticed that. Oops. Two, three. Goodness gracious, this sucks. Okay. Should have just plugged it in on my phone, I guess. Negative. negative 0.002x squared plus 5.2. All right, last one. Squared plus 2.73. Goodness gracious. Okay. So now what we are going to do, we're not going to hit graph. We're going to look at the table. And we're going to try to find the one that matches the table that is on the problem the best. Okay. So looking at the table on the problem, I'm going to look for the ones that have 5, 3, 10, 10, and 15, 17 first. So 5, 3, right? So the red one and the purple one are the closest. 10, 10, we've got blue, red, and purple are closest. And then 15, 17, we've got the red is the closest. And then, let's see, 20, 27, 25, 44. At 20, the closest is red. And then 25, 44 would be red. And so red seems to be clearly the closest one in the table, which is B. Okay, so we're just looking for the one that ended up having a table closest to the one that's on the problem. Okay, let's move to the next one. It says the graph of a linear function is shown on the grid. What is the rate of change of y with respect to x for this function? So that's a really confusing way to say what is the slope. You guys have 2 minutes starting now. Alrighty, let's go over this problem. So it's asking for the slope or the rate of change. And if you guys remember from the very beginning, we have our formula chart. So I'm going to go all the way back to the formula chart. And I'm going to look at the slope of a line equation because we're finding the slope. Rate of change is slope, okay? And so I'm going to be using this formula in order to find the slope. So I'm going to go back to number 19, and I'm going to write that problem down so that I can, or write that equation down so that I can use it. So it's m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, and x1 and y1, x2 and y2, those are coordinates. So right here I've got x1, y1, and x2, y2. So I'm going to plug those into the equation now. So y1 comes, or y2 comes in the top left-hand corner. So I'm going to use y2 right here, which is 2, minus, and then I'm going to plug in y1, which is 3.6, over x2 is 5, minus x1 is negative 3. So negative 3. So we have a double negative there. And so now I can plug this into the calculator, or I can just solve it here. So 2 minus 3.6 is going to be negative 1.6 on top. 5 minus negative 3 becomes 5 plus 3, which is 8. And now we're trying to simplify this fraction. So now I'm going to use my calculator. To get out of the table, I press second, quit, second, and then quit is the button right next to second. And I'm going to plug in negative 1.8 divided by, what is it divided by 8? Oh, negative 1.6 divided by 8. And that's negative 0.2. And let's say I don't really know what that is as a fraction. Okay, so here's a cool trick with the calculator. So the trick is we're going to click on the math button. The math button is right under the green button. So the math button. Do you guys see that thing at the very top that says frac? So that means fraction. So I'm going to press enter. And then answer fraction, enter, and it tells me what the fraction is, -1/5, which actually, I don't think we can even bubble in fraction, so we probably didn't need to do that. So this is a bubble in question. So actually, we would just be doing -0.2, and that's what we'd be bubbling in. You would not be bubbling in 1/5. So doing the fraction thing again, which didn't apply to this problem, but we go, so I can type in -1.6 divided by 8. And I've got some weird decimal. Let's say I want to change it to a fraction. I press math, enter, enter is what it ends up being. So math is underneath the green button. And then enter, enter, and that's how I got the -1/5. So that's how you change a decimal to a fraction, just for future reference, since you didn't need to know it for this one. Okay, number 21 should be super, super, super easy. So you've got 1 minute to do it on your own. Alrighty, your 1 minute is up. We can solve this problem by using our calculators. So we would go to y equals and plug this equation in. So in our calculator, we click on y equals, which is in the top left-hand corner. I'm going to clear out the stuff that's in there. And I'm going to plug in my new equation, which was -x². What was it? Plus 6x minus 1. All right, so this is what it should look like. Remember, the squared button is 3 buttons below the green button or the alpha button. Then I'm going to hit graph. And from the last problem, my screen is pretty weird, okay? So I'm gonna mess around with the zoom button, and this is what you guys should do on your test too. If something happens with the calculator that you're not sure about, then you press zoom. Like if you can't see stuff on your calculator, you will not be able to zoom in with your fingers. Don't forget that. So I'm gonna press zoom, and then I'm gonna try to figure out which one of these would probably be best. So let's see, we've got zoom in, zoom out. Eventually, yeah, we're gonna have to zoom in. Zoom standard, I think, is normally good. So let's hit that. And there we go. Okay. So zoom standard brought me close enough. And then you can either zoom out or zoom in from there. So we can look at this graph and we can automatically cross off B and C. All right. And so now it's in between A and D. And the difference between these two graphs is that the top of this one is at 3.8 and the top of this one is at 3.10. So we need to figure out, does our graph look like it's at the top is at 8 or at 10? So let's look. And I can see on the left and the right hand side that we've got 9 and 6. Like our top of our graph is in between 9 and 6. So that rules out 10. And so we can choose A, because this is called the vertex, is in between 6 and 9. So the answer was A. 3 more problems. Okay, 22 says, a company advertises on a website. Wow. Some of these questions are so outdated. A worker tracks the number of visits to the website and the number of clicks on the advertisement. The table shows the data for several days. A linear function can be used to model the data. So number of visits to the website and number of clicks on the advertisement. And it says, based on the table, what is the best prediction of the number of clicks on the advertisement if 1,500 people visit the website? You've got 2 minutes starting now. Okie doke. So this problem is tough. It's out of order, right? But let's try to mess around on our calculator and see what we can do. So let's go here. I'm gonna get out of my graph. And let's see. Do I want to do linear regression or let's see. Okay, so I'm going to go over very slowly how to do linear regression. Okay, linear regression means that the problem gives you a bunch of points and you can plug them into your calculator and make an equation out of the points. Okay, so here are the steps. I would write them down on a piece of paper so that you can refer to them later. There might be another problem or two like this on the STAAR test that we go over. So the first button that I'm going to press is STAT. And STAT is located 2 buttons to the right of the green button. So it says STAT. All right, and then I'm going to click Edit. So enter. And L1, L2, L3, L4, those are like columns on a table. Okay. So now I'm going to enter in the numbers from the table that they gave us. So I've got 153.14. Oh, that's not what I wanted. 153. Go to the right. 14. Enter. The next point is 629.38. 38, right? Yeah, and then 471.30. Well, it won't let me scroll to the right. In normal calculators, it does let you scroll to the right. The apps are going to have little kinks and stuff, but your actual graphing calculators are not going to have kinks. 914 and 53. Then we've got 307 and 21. Then we've got 1045 and 60. Okay. 510 and 32. And finally, 1106 and 63. Okay, so we've got our table plugged into our calculator. Now I'm going to press STAT again. So STAT, remember, is 2 buttons to the right of the green button. I'm going to scroll to the right. So I'm going to right arrow because you guys see how there's like different columns. There's edit, calc, and tests. We want to go to the right to calc. And then this option number 4, but it's really the second one down, says lin reg. That stands for linear regression. And you see how it says ax plus b? That's what we want. We want a linear equation. So I'm going to scroll down to that. I'm going to press enter. And then you keep pressing enter until it gives you your equation. So do you see on the right-hand side how we have an equation? So A is 0.05, blah, blah, blah. B is 5.5, blah, blah, blah. So our equation is about y equals, you're going to let me write? Y equals 0.05x plus 5.5. About. Okay. So the equation we got, and again, like the calculator stuff, guys, this is really hard to teach in person in the classroom. So like that's why I'm recording this. So if there's something that you don't like that I go too fast on or whatever, you can go back and watch it, because like it's literally like impossible to teach online. So we went to, I'm going to go over all the steps again. We did stat, edit, plugged it in. Then we click stat, scroll to the right to calc, linear regression, enter, enter. And I'm about to show you. And this isn't even the answer yet. So we got the equation. Now we need to use the equation to find the answer. Okay? So X is the number of people visiting. So we're going to plug in 1,500 for X in the calculator. So we're going to have Y equals 0.05 times 1,500 plus 5.5. And we're going to see what that number is. Oops. So we got 0.05 times 1,500 plus 5.5. That is 80.5. 80.5 is closest to, Jesus, it's right in between F and H. It's closest to H. Let me double check that that's the right answer. Hold on. Because that was literally right in the middle. Yeah, it's closer to 83, but by half. So I just want to double check. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yay, we got it right. That should have given us a more exact answer than it did. So I don't know if maybe the calculator's a little off. That's really strange that it did not give us the exact answer. Okay, moving on. So the graph of the linear function is shown on the grid. Which equation is best represented by this graph? Okay, so a lot of people would automatically go and try to plug these into y equals. The problem is that these problems are not solved for y. In order to plug them into y equals, the equation has to be straight up y equals. And on all of these, they either have y plus 2 or y minus 2 on the side. So what we have to do to plug these into the calculator is we have to solve for y on each of them. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides for this one. So I would get y equals 7/5 times x plus 7 minus 2. Always stick it on the end. Don't try to subtract from inside the parentheses. You cannot do that. Those parentheses are attached to the 7/5 part. Okay, so add it onto the end. Here we're going to add 2. So this one is y equals 7/5 times x minus 7 plus 2. For this one, we subtract 2. So we've got y equals 5/7 times x plus 7 minus 2. Add 2. Y equals 5/7 times x minus 7 plus 2. Goodness gracious. Now we're going to plug each of these into y equals and see which one matches this graph. So we go to y equals, top left-hand corner. We clear it out. Now we're going to plug in those equations. So the first one was 7/5 times x plus, what was it? X plus 7 minus 2. Parentheses are above 8 and 9. This one was, again, 7/5 times x minus 7 plus 2. Five sevenths. X plus 7 Okay, so take your time, plug in all 4 of those equations. Then we're going to look at their graphs and see which one matches the graph on the picture the best. Which, hopefully you guys are figuring out, that's like half of the STAAR test is plugging it into y equals and then looking at it. Okay, so I'm going to hit graph. And those are my 4 lines, okay? So I'm going to look at my graph again. And I can automatically cross off the blue and the black lines, which were A and C. So I'm going to cross off A and C. And now it's in between B and D. And so we're going to look, I need it to cross at -3 and at 4. And the pink line crosses at -3 and 4. So it's the pink line, which was D. And that's why it's nice to plug them in order so that when you go back to y equals, you can be like, oh yeah, that's this one. And if your calculator is in black and white, then you just like erase one at a time until you figure out which one it was. Okay, last problem. Which expression is equivalent to xy to the -6 squared for all values of x and y where the expression is defined? Okay, so this is exponent rules, if you guys remember those videos. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to distribute this squared to the x and to the y. When you raise an exponent to an exponent, you end up multiplying them. So this was really x to the first power y to the -6. So I'm multiplying both of those exponents by 2. So it becomes x squared y to the -12. And then if you guys remember, negative exponents have to flip sides. So this becomes x squared over y to the 12th, which is, oh, they didn't even want us to do that. It was h. Normally they don't have negative exponents in the answers. So another weird one from the STAAR test. Okay, so that's it for today. Lots of talking like usual, but it's going to pay off in the long run if you guys are learning this stuff, if you're writing it down, if you're studying it later, if you watch these videos again later. I would recommend kind of buzzing through these videos one more time before the STAAR test next week. Remember, which is on Tuesday next week. So let me know if you need any help with anything. Y'all should get a 100 on this quiz. And then come back tomorrow for the next one. It'll be a recording for you guys. And